was a great introduction. Thank you. First, I'd just like to say a little bit about me and my experience in CCRCs. I came into our field in 1980, and I actually did my internship for my graduate degree in a continuing care retirement community. So that was an excellent start on my journey. The company that I work for, the organization is called Episcopal Senior Communities, and we own and operate 6 CCRCs within the San Francisco Bay Area. And we also operate 6 affordable housing communities and an extensive home and community-based services program for the individuals who do not live within our communities, but who are low-income seniors living out in the community. So our journey really began back in about 2006, 2007. I had just come to the organization and some important things were underway. One was that we were in the process of beginning a very extensive master plan on one of our older campuses, and it involved the creation of a lot of new residential units, over 60 residential units, and a substantial change to the program on that campus, which of course affected the residents who have lived there. Then the second thing that happened during that time was that our organization underwent a reorganization, and we formed a parent company which would then be the location of any kind of development activity or of any activity that might provide financial risk to the organization, which would then impact the security of the residents within the CCRCs. And then the third thing that happened in that time period was that one of our residents within our CCRCs filed a lawsuit against the organization because of this reorganization. So as you can imagine, it was a period of great discontent. But looking back on that time, it really provided very fertile ground for initiating a proactive resident communication policy and a proactive resident engagement effort. So because our communities are located in the state of California, we have the benefit of something called continuing care statutes, which is a statewide document which gives us some format to our resident engagement and resident communication efforts. And those statutes specify that certain events occur. And one of them is that there is resident representation at board meetings. And this is a non-voting position where a resident representative is involved in board meetings and does participate in discussion. And in our situation, we have one resident representative from each community that attends board meetings. So the statutes also require that there be notification and a formal presentation of the annual rate increase with all the backup and with all the budgetary information. And then it also requires certain communication practices and certain guidelines for responding to resident communication. So we did have the benefit of that document as we formulated our policies, but I think our organization has gone so much farther in this journey. So in 2008, we developed something called the Resident Communication Policy. And that policy, in a very systematic way, outlines what the different roles are of all the constituents, of all the people pulling the wagon, as you described. And that policy has been reviewed every 2 years and is then altered as needs be to reflect what the current needs are of the organization and of the residents. So I'd like to just read the policy statement so that you have an idea of what we hope to achieve in putting this policy forward. So the policy of Episcopal senior communities will always, the Board of Episcopal senior communities will always conduct its business with the best interests of the organization as a whole and in service to current as well as future residents. And the board recognizes and expects communication with residents, whether from the board or from management, to be clear, concise, and timely. And that really is our guiding principle there, so that we can interact with residents, management interacts with residents, and it's an ongoing process. It's not once a year, it's not twice a year, it's ongoing. So the purpose is to communicate thoughts, messages, and information. And you all know that sometimes when there is information communicated from providers to residents, it can be a very emotional situation. And it's been our experience that the more communication takes place, you can take some of the emotion out of the messages and start really talking with each other in a much more constructive manner. So we try and emphasize open and honest exchange of information, thoughts, and ideas. And within this policy, we have outlined specific roles and responsibilities of the different stakeholders in this process. I'd just like to go over them with you. We felt it was important to delineate and to really establish those roles and responsibilities in writing so that everyone would feel that the expectations were very clear. So the Residents' Council has been recognized as the elected leadership which represents the residents' perspective. And we really focus on the word elected, because sometimes what you find within CCRCs is that there are a lot of opinions being shared, and sometimes the people sharing a lot of the very vocal opinions and very strong opinions may not be representing the opinion of the resident body as a whole. So we feel very strongly that the communication needs to flow through the executive director to the resident council. And that has been very helpful in establishing clear communication. We also have a resident representative to the ESC Board of Directors from each community. And this representative attends all the board meetings and gives a report at the board meeting. There is an agenda item where that resident representative is asked to give a report on any pertinent happenings or changes at their community. And also this resident representative really gives a very honest impression of how things are going at the community to the board. And we also have a voting resident member on the ESC Board of Directors, and that voting member is elected during our resident summit, our annual resident summit, and the residents elect that representative. We also have residents serving on the ESC board standing committees, and they do not have to be resident representatives. They do not have to be resident board members. They They are residents who are living within our communities who have a particular interest in that specific board committee, such as investment, such as finance, such as Quality First, which is our quality committee. And they really offer a lot of resident input and resident insight into the decisions being made. And it is the ESC's role, it is ESC's management role to respond in a specified time frame to any communication which is sent to us from residents. And that has been very helpful too, because sometimes you might hear from residents, well, I wrote a letter and no one answered. So we are expected to acknowledge that communication, not necessarily reply or give an answer to that communication. It's within a specified business day period. But we do need to acknowledge that there has been a letter sent to us which has a specified list of requests or is sharing information. We are so I'll just review what those standards are. And what it says is all inquiries, concerns, correspondence, which is voicemail, email, letters, etc., will be acknowledged no later than 2 business days after the receipt of that communication. So the goal is that the communication takes place and that the resident knows, yes, we have received your letter, your question, and you will be responded to. It is our goal as an organization that we don't get into a letter writing campaign back and forth. So whenever possible, we really try to set a meeting. Management will set a meeting with that resident and meet face to face so that we can communicate face to face instead of sending letters back and forth, which, as you know, sometimes become more and more heated as they are exchanged. We have several methods and opportunities for communication between residents and our board members and our management staff. We have scheduled semi-annual resident meetings with representatives of the board and ESC senior managements. One of those meetings, we have 2 a year at each community, and one of those meetings is focused around the rate increase for the next year and all of the reasons for the rate increase. And then the second one is focused around audit presentation. We have a very involved budget process. Each of our communities has something called a financial study group, and that financial study group is made up both of members of the council and of other residents who meet with the executive director at the community with ESC management being present also. I attend those meetings, so does our CFO, and so does our senior budget analyst. And the first meeting is just to describe what the budget process is, share the budget calendar, talk about the financial performance over the last year, and to talk about any budget assumptions that may be in place as the management team at that community goes through and creates a new budget. And then the budget is created with the input of the resident committees in the community, and that budget is put together by the executive director and their management staff, again in communication with the resident committees. Then the financial study group meets again, and we review the budget, and we talk about what the assumptions are. We always use a zero-based budgeting process, and that's when a lot of the activity comes to play. Well, we say that we're adding another FTE in nursing. Why are we doing that? We also address any specific requests that the resident committees in that community have brought forth. And then we go to the board finance committee with our budget recommendation, with our original budget recommendation. But before we do that, we have one final meeting with the resident finance committee so that they can share their concerns, their input, how they feel the budget process went. And so when we go back to the board finance committee, we can share with them how the residents felt about this proposed budget. So they get an opportunity to hear the residents' feedback on any proposed rate increases, any proposed staffing changes, any additional costs prior to the board finance committee meeting on that rate increase and presenting it to the full board. So there's a lot of opportunity in that time period to have back and forth conversations. And of course, rate setting is probably always the most delicate time of year in any community. So I'm not saying that it's a perfect situation, but there certainly is a lot of communication about it. And there's full disclosure on the budget. The only thing that we don't share is our salaries, our personnel issues and our staffing salaries. But the resident finance committee has access to every line item in the budget with the backup. And they also discuss those on a monthly basis with the executive director. So we feel like that's a very open way that we can share what the true picture is of the community operations. And one thing that we put into place this year is something called a community-based planning process in each community. And that committee is comprised of the executive director, management team, and five to six resident representatives who are selected by the elected residents body. And their role is to develop short-range and long-term plans for that distinct community, which then rolls up into the organization's strategic plan. And that community-based planning group meets approximately 4 times a year, and we always have an annual kickoff. This is our second year where we bring in some kind of an educational presenter to talk to the community-based planning group about what trends are in senior housing, how the environment has changed, and we're entering our second year of that process, and it's been a really good process for our organization, I think. So some of the methods and opportunity for communication and resident engagement in our organization are, as I said, semi-annual resident meetings with representatives of the board and ESC senior management, fireside chats, resident association meetings within the individual communities. We do have, as I said, resident representatives to the ESC board of directors. We have resident members on ESC board committees. We have a voting resident member on our board. The financial study group process, the community-based planning process, which I just outlined. We have resident directors' lunches at the quarterly ESC board meetings, where there's an opportunity for the board members and the residents in the various CCRCs to talk. Once a year, we have something called a annual resident summit, where all of the communities will select five residents who can attend, who are resident council members, who are interested residents, and we all get together for a full day's meeting where we let them know any changes that may be coming up in our organization, where we talk about development issues, and where all of the residents have an opportunity to share with each other across the various CCRCs. And then in addition to that, on our website, we have our audit is posted on our website, and all of the 990s and all of the salaries are right on the website. So everyone can access those very easily without asking for them. And I think that's all that I have.